I wrote out of a discipline and just an extension of my own musicianship. And when I started to try to get published at the encouragement of my community of faith and my church I was serving at and some of the friends I had in university, I didn't know anything. I had a suitcase, Kurt Kaiser here in Waco and Stephen Carroll's dad, Joe Carroll, at Hyde Park Baptist Church got me an appointment in Nashville with Clydesdale and all these guys. You know, they slammed the door. Now, they didn't do that, but they said thanks, no thanks. But I was just a guy with a suitcase full of cassette tapes that I'd take my choir, you know, trying to break into the business.
Somebody tell Emily what a cassette tape is.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not that young.
Now,
Oh, okay, all right.
you know, but think about the paradigm shift in culture. I had 2 suitcases full of cassette tapes, and it was probably my entire oeuvre at that time, 50 anthems maybe. And
handwritten manuscripts.
Handwritten manuscripts, that's correct. I have 1,600 things in print now. I can put both the scores, the orchestrations, and the recordings on my cell phone. And we didn't have cell phones back then. If they did, they looked like field hospital phones, you know.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's been amazing. The technology is, you are living as new composers or composers of wanting to break in, if that's your job. Some of you already broke in, but in a time where technology is greatly going to enable you. You know, it's just a wonderful time to be writing. But I always said that if I ever, Lord, if you'll ever let me make it or have any kind of say, I'll help people, and because I have been helped. And so we start these symposiums and these seminars in order to pass along whatever we can to help people kick it up a notch. And my philosophy on this is that publishing does not validate you as a creative individual. It's an exclamation point that is very positive, there's no doubt, and nobody would lie to you about that. It's, I can't even describe it to you, the feeling of hearing your dots and dashes vibrated to life like they are this week. Guess why we started a conference as a party we throw for ourselves, because we just love interacting with great musicians. So I'm not going to lie to you, yes, getting published and having these level of performances is a wonderful thing to have happen. But I am a better person because I'm a composer. And it's because you take the words of this message that we've been entrusted with and you just spend time with them. And it's slowed down. Listening is one kind of, and it's a beautiful thing, to listen to music. But to just have it all over you, you know. When you take one line that we take 4 seconds to sing, it may take, you know, a week to really part write it, accompany it, put it in perspective, change it, rewrite it 10 times. You know, like I said, the last session did best end of the pencil's erasure. But that is why I'm so gung-ho on people writing their own lyrics, discovering, arranging for their own groups. Not because your end would be publishing or to write a million seller or anything like that. If that happens, that's chosen in ways that are mysterious even to us, and we're in the business. But because it is a wonderful discipline, spiritual nurturing, because you've been given this unusual gift. And I've never regretted any moments that I've spent searching for that lost chord, so to speak. So I want to say that up front because not everybody in this room could possibly be, published next week. I mean, it's just not going to happen. That's just the dynamics of the business. And that, with that said, I don't want to be discouraging either because who knows? Heather Sorensen was an unsolicited manuscript to Lloyd Larson, and she had one in front of me. You know, it happened. We met at a conference. You've already published one, you got another one coming out. So these are the things that, connecting the dots is what we want to try to do as much as possible. So I've started week-long seminars. One's going to be in Austin in the fall, one is in Atlanta, and in the 11 years that we have been doing, it'll be 11 years this year, a symposium over 150 pieces that were presented or studied or lessoned and critiqued during the sessions have been published. 150. That's just crazy to me. But it's just a joyful fact, and I'm grateful for the opportunity of having people like Lloyd, Larson, and Heather, and Robert Sterling, who's a genius. By the way, they have his book, which I highly recommend in the bookstore. After our last session, I went to check. They had 3 or 4 copies of it. It's called The Craft of Christian Songwriting, and it's very, very good reading. And so that would be one resource I'd point you to. Anyway, all of that as a Reader's Digest introduction to why we're having a session like this. I would like to know, and I think Lloyd would too, about where you're coming from. If you didn't get a chance to speak about your own writing in just a few sentences, we'll use that as a jumping off place of what we can do to help you along, and maybe make some comments in a global sense from where you're journey. Tell us about your writing, or did you just started, you composed and published and all of that already?
I'm not published. I'm writing.
What do you do?
I teach at Dallas Baptist University.
Oh, fabulous.
And I teach in the graduate worship leadership program.
Beautiful.
And I teach class songwriting. I do a lot of writing myself, but I've never published anything. I've written a couple of anthems. One anthem I've written, and I would like to get it published.
Good. Well, songwriting is has almost become the predominant, the sacred song is a predominant art form in the business now. And anthems are still, though, very, very, very popular. And we make a lot of, this conference maybe even a little skewed more towards anthem, of course, than songwriting. But
I got a couple of students that have some things published already.
fabulous. That's wonderful.
They're better than me.
My students are too. Like I said, we should have taken the shot while we had a chance, you know. They must be destroyed. Well, that's good to know. And Linda, what's your?
Very small church means I have few people to work with. I'm rewriting other things, you know, to where they can sing them. Sometimes I have a chorus or something like that, you know, that I like the lyrics too. You know, I just want to be the best I can be. Y'all all know more than I am, but I've been inspired, you know, and I gain some knowledge when I come here.
That's fantastic. What would you, now you're a small church,
Yes.
if you were to tell these writers anything about writing for your need, what would you tell them?
Gosh, y'all do it all. It's just that sometimes I grab a piece that's too big for us and I want it to fit.
Yeah.
But you
What are your
wouldn't
ranges?
want
What
to,
are
you
your-
wouldn't want to rhyme for that.
Why not? I grew up in a small church with 9 in the choir.
What?
Lloyd used to have a big church, but he'd run them all.
We're not. We're not what drives the industry, but you want your people to have the best that there can be.
And that's key. That's key.
You know,
Michael,
and I
tell
was
her
so-
what, I'm gonna connect some dots. I love intersections. And I was really wanting you to teach something. If I'd have said it, it wouldn't matter. But see, you're the one who is in need. And he has a piece getting ready to come out. And we had a talk about it, because he could write anything. He could do, you know, big splash. I mean, there's no limitations there. But he happened to send in a piece, and I've been listening to people like yourself. Lloyd has to hear this too, because we sit and we go over figures, and we listen to phone messages and internet things about the needs in small churches. And he sent a piece in, and I said, this was perfect, it's the right time, because we needed something for that small church, something energetic, and he said, write it for them, instead of trying to take the Hallelujah chorus and smash it down into something.
I did that too.
Oh,
I mean, I want them to have the great things.
Yeah.
I want them to have the inspiring things.
But
You
you
know, I want
can
them to-
do it with limited resources
Right.
if you know how to arrange.
I had heard Pepper Chaplin say years ago, he says, you know, on a Sunday morning after the choir sung the anthem, our congregations don't sit back and say, wow, didn't the choir do a wonderful SAB anthem?
Yeah.
Didn't the choir do a wonderful unison anthem, or an SATB DVC anthem? They say, you know, that anthem spoke to me, or the choir loft is full today, or the guy sounded superb, you know, the text, I love the text. our congregations are ministered to, the division of an anthem, the form and analysis, all that kind of thing isn't what speaks. It's God's Spirit speaking through that which the choir and these people appreciate and respect because of their Christian pilgrimage, their journey of faith. And that's what challenges, inspires, and encourages. And so the reality is that the majority of choirs in America have probably 12 voices or fewer. That's the majority of choirs in America. And to talk about your choir, you may, and your congregation, it may feel like a small situation, but in reality, comparatively speaking, it may be very much in the middle of things, or even a large church by relative comparison.
And why I wanted you to say it out loud is because a conference like this is such a mountaintop. It's almost seductress, because you think, this has got to be, this is not real life. I mean, it's a wonderful retreat for your spirit, It's just, I mean, are you kidding me? We don't hear this all the time. Recording studios have grabbed away a lot of great musicians and taught them sent them the wrong message. Because we don't have studio musicians in most of our churches, and so I would love to just pull out all the stops and show you what I can do with an anthem one of these days. But you know what? I wasn't called to show off. I was called to try to help you guys sound good. I mean, I really do feel called into that. And Lloyd says he's one of you. He is, week after week. And so he could write a fugue if he had to, It's a technical term. But he knows that there's a moment in worship that is going to be needful of song. And to fill that in a way that this is the way I always say, is that you disappear as a composer, that your craftsmanship gets to the point where you can be, the message becomes illuminated and the music cradles it in just the right way, sort of like a picture frame cradles the Mona Lisa, Only our masterpiece is a capital M and it's called the gospel. And this message, capital M, this masterpiece, is framed by the music. That it just gets to hold it out for people, you see. And the best thing for a frame maker, you know the guy who did the frame on the Mona Lisa, right? Right, exactly, is my point. The best thing you can possibly be is for those people in the pew to go, oh, well, that was a tremendous Lloyd Larson piece. No, for them to go away with what he just got through saying, that beautiful, graceful message has been implanted in their hearts in a different way than just the spoken word would have done. Nothing wrong with that, but as many ways as we can surround them with the grace message, and music is certainly an important one. That's what sacred music is all about. Now there's concert hall and there's sanctuary. Sometimes they cross-pollinate beautifully, and that's a great moment too. But
we're never going to get through this list here, Joe.
What list? Oh, I know. Well, I see. Half of them I've listened to their sad stories. I was just trying to look at somebody else volunteer. You're right. Move us on. Who wants to speak next? It's just good. We're using you as a jumping off place. Share your story.
Well, you know what she was saying there. I've arranged and composed all my life, and the way I look at it is if there's a piece that I really want to use and it's mostly usable, but maybe there's some things that just don't work, it's probably not kosher to do this, but I just fix it, Yeah. I just, the tenor part's too high for my guys, I just sort of revoice it, give the altos that tenor note, give the tenors that make the harmony work.
Lloyd will never know.
Yeah, I did that with one of his pieces.
Yeah, I fixed my own pieces with my choir when you got. I certainly have done Joe's with
I have rewritten my own stuff all the time.
It happens,
I heard Benji Harlan's a good friend of mine. Benji was playing doing a workshop one time, and he was playing something of his own, and he just stopped. He said, "Why did I write that?" But But if you know a little bit about arranging and a little bit about chord structure and things like that, you can make some simple. Just have your folks to have a pencil in their hands, and what I liken it to is like it's like buying a man's suit. You know, I can go and buy one off the rack, but I'm so tall, and you know, I have to have it cut full under here, so when I direct, you know, that I've got enough room. And it's so much better if you get it custom fit.
Yeah.
It fits better.
Yeah.
And that's what you have to do. That's the attitude that I take with any music that I like. Sometimes it's perfect. Sometimes it works just great for my particular group. Other times, my particular group, it needs a little tweaking, and so I just tweak it. You know.
There's a collaborative spirit which is at the heart of who we are and what we do. I mean, we want our resources to work in your church.
Our survival depends on it.
Well, it does, but even more than that, you know, it's a matter of making these usable resources, usable ministry tools for the places where you are. One of the things I oftentimes say in settings like this, you know, people talk about being composers and creating something. Yeah, that's a critical baseline component to all this. But one of the things I encourage people in a composition seminar and people that are interested in that kind of craft is to develop the craft, develop the skills when it comes to arranging. There are a lot of great ideas which never see the light of day because people didn't package them well, they didn't arrange them well. And I strongly encourage you, go back and study the hymnal, you know, the common practice period approach to four-part chorale writing. I mean, that's the best resource that we have at our disposal. It's readily there, you know. And it goes back to those of you who've had college or arranging classes somewhere along the line. The same principles apply, and you see them employed in our hymnals, which have gone through the hands of many editors a lot of times. But develop a sense of understanding of what works from an arranging standpoint, because it will help you to package your creation, whatever that might be, and it'll help you to package it well. And then it becomes a far more usable resource for, especially thinking church or school or whatever, for situations like yours and like mine and like where Joe has served and all of that. So I strongly encourage you to work on that arranging, shaping, developing, refining that skill.
You know, it reminds me, Lloyd, as you were saying that maybe because we have limited time, maybe we ought to just maybe have some questions too, because some people may have come in the room really burning to ask two editors about something. Or if not, we'll continue on with our ideas, but yeah.
I have one. With all the new technology, where do you see that taking the publishing industry?
Well, that's the question now, isn't it? We both work for competitive companies, and I suspect that we're both right now working on how to understand the best uses of this digital world that we live in. The delivery system is no doubt going to change to some degree. It already has. You can get now, instead of a warehouse full of orchestrations of Martin and Larson cantatas, which are about this big, now Martin and Larson cantatas can be, well, they can actually be stored on the web in a microchip. And so spaciousness, that in itself has created great opportunities for us to be flexible and helpful. It's taken a while for us to adapt to all of those things because they have to be scanned and digitalized and all those things. But that's one example of a brave new world for us as musicians. We've talked about, and I don't know if Lorenz is working on it, but the Netflix model of subscription access and things like that. There's all kinds of strange ideas being floated, but then when you think about it, maybe it's not so strange after all. Maybe something like a device would be held by the choir, an iPad sort of thing, and you know, your choir director is a member of the Lorenz, digital network, and he dials up the call to worship and he orders everything, and it's all done and organized, and they are able to monetize it and scan it and charge appropriately and all of that. And when your choir gets there in the morning, they take out their big iPad and they go, and there's your worship medley. there is your anthem, there is, the band's playing symphony, and it's all done through these.
That works great until the wireless router goes down.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say the pro of that is you don't have the noise of page turns.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you all, exactly what he said. I mean, it's like, how many times is a power failure taking out the accompaniment track, or somebody hit the wrong one.
For my choir, we're gonna need real big iPads.
I know, yeah.
Big print iPads.
The digital thing, at this point, we haven't seen a mass rush for choral.
Because it's still a bargain. The choral octave
It
is a
is,
bargain.
especially when you consider, somebody standing at a photocopier with permission, to collate, to photocopy, collate, staple, or prepare whatever. It still feels an awful lot better to buy it that way. But where we're finding it, at least with Lorenz Publishing, where I'm an editor and also work with some of the keyboard products, we are saying, the reality is that we will probably never, these copyrights are copyrights we probably will hold forevermore, because maybe you might not sell the book of 10 arrangements down the road, but you might very well sell each arrangement a PDF that somebody goes and orders a la carte, because somebody requested the Lord's my shepherd, Savior like a shepherd lead me, or how great thou art. They wanted the Marquez arrangement of that, or they come on the website knowing that tomorrow they have a memorial service and the family today has requested this, and I don't have, and where can I find one? And they go on the website and say, oh, there it is, I can immediately order, purchase, legally print it off, and we're ready to go. That's a whole lot different scenario than buying 25, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50 octavos by way of a digital download. But those are available because in certain ways and certain times. We have, as you guys do, a special license agreement with some of the music dealers. Like a Pine Lake, although Pine Lake I don't think is doing this at this point, but there are some that do, that will simply say, hey, you can license this particular tune, you get permission, you pay for the quantity for which you are going to photocopy. There's still the honor system involved in that, but there is too when you buy a piece of music too. So we're banking on all of us to recognize the need for this, because the reality is, if you all are photocopying our music, all it does is raise the prices ultimately in the end, and it costs the church and the music directors and the music ministries even more so than it probably costs the composers who have presented the music. So
I was just gonna say, I'm on the music committee for a community band, and we have a license, and and that all the members are responsible for downloading their own copies.
oh yeah, okay.
And so, maybe choral stuff is gonna go that direction as well. So we no longer have to keep the library with all of the file cabinets, and we're digitizing everything, so we don't have
Interesting.
to
Okay.
store that somewhere.
Yeah.
About a thing from Celebrating Grace that I put some preschool stuff, and what I got was 2 CDs, and you print off what you need off the CDs.
I remember when CDs first came out to replace the albums, and you remember how they were packaged? The package was massive because the perceived value of something so small they had to be a transition in people's mind. So they gave these big tall packages with the album cover on it, and all the liner notes and everything, because people wouldn't. I'm not going to pay $16 for something that big, even though it had the same identical information that and sometimes more than the LP. So I think some people are so used to getting the perceived value of let's say a cantata in this form, whereas it'll take a while for them to maybe move to this idea of what. I mean, I still want to own the White Album. My son doesn't care. Why do I want to have it? I just reach out and grab it off of the cloud and bring it down when I want to listen to the White Album. I like to get mine out and look at it and go, the Beatles, yeah, I remember.
Well, can I dovetail on that? Because I teach middle school choir as well as I'm an assistant for Sterling. And I've bought a lot of stuff on, Sheet Music Plus or whatever, the digital downloads for the pop songs or whatever for my kids. And I find that I lose them a lot
Mhm.
because I print them out on the 8.5 by 11s and it looks just like every piece of junk that I've already gotten. So I
Yeah.
just trash it and then I'm like, well, crud, now I have to pay another $6
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
piece of music. Whereas, you know, I've got an original, you know, the octavo style piece of music. I'm not going to lose that. Or if it's in a book, I'm not going to lose it. But I think if the availability of here, you buy the rights and maybe you pay $10 for a song instead, but then you have that ability to pull it up online whenever you want instead of that one time you print it and sorry, you don't have the rights anymore. I mean, I'd be willing to do that for me just because I tend to lose stuff like that. I don't know if I'm the only one.
If well, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I mean, I think it's valid. You know, one of the things that we have changed in recent years, remember the old orchestrations like for cantatas and what have you, or even octavos, but especially cantata, you know, if you bought the orchestration for a cantata, it came in a monster box with everything all printed. Well, now we basically, we for the most part, we usually, although Lorenz, we'll provide the digital option for this too, but usually somebody will buy it and we'll send them the conductor score and then a disc. And so you can print off all the parts. And if you do not have a tuba, if you do not have a bassoon, you may not print that part off. But the reality is, I mean, I can remember years ago, I actually had orchestrated a cantata and handwritten everything, including hand copied. Actually, I think my wife had hand copied from my score. And the night before the cantata, we came for the dress rehearsal, and the clarinet player says, my dad accidentally threw the clarinet part in the trash and it's gone. We had to go home and recopy. It took longer to recopy the clarinet part than it took to do the whole cantata in churches the next day. And you know, those kinds of things have happened in various ways when we had the hard copies and we didn't do that. The nice thing about the disc is that you do own it. You do own it, and the publishers will have no problem with you if you have a clarinet player that needs to write in every single sharp. But the next time you do that work, you hire the professional who doesn't write in anything, you know, and they don't mind you printing off a new because you own it. And so I think there are some ways that we can find some happy ground in the middle on all of this, and I think we're still, evolving.
There's a generational thing too, because it dawned on me laying in bed one night, trying to find something to make me go sleep. And so I was clicking, I go, oh, here's HBO. I'm going to see if there's a good movie on it. I like to watch James Bond flicks, so, you know, I'm looking. But I'm going through, and then I stumbled across, oh, Iron Man 2. I haven't seen Iron Man 2. That's what I'll do. Now, my son thinks that's crazy. He knows exactly what he wants to watch when he goes to Netflix, you know, and he chooses based on the entire universe of movies that is available to him on that system. I, on the other hand, let HBO choose for me and my thumb, because I don't go through it and I go, oh, this is what's playing tonight that I choose. And I think that there's two different types, and there's probably another person who actually goes to the store and says, I want to own this permanently, and I will watch it at my leisure and pop the popcorn and whatever. So there are all these different ways of accessing these moments, entertainment moments or intellectual property moments. And my son gets everything on his Kindle. I still like to have the newspaper and sit on the back porch on Sunday morning before I get ready for church and just go, you know, and go through and read the funny papers, and I do the sports, see what the Cardinals did, you know, and it's just an old paradigm, but that's, a lot of people are that way. And so I think for a while we're going to have maybe 2, 3, 4 systems going on. One will begin to disappear, and the others will, I mean, hardback books have not disappeared.
Oh, and think about vinyl. You know, with vinyl, it's having a renaissance, a resurgence of interest, and people are, you know, the vinyl stores are doing well these days.
That's right.
So I mean, who knows? Who can predict? And
but that is a fascinating. Right now, we're all just kind of amazed and I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Finale changed my life. I don't know about yours. Bach had Finale, he had 30 kids. More time on his hands.
I knew where that was headed.
Yes, sir.
So
You can edit that out, can't you?
I'm hope so. I think what's there is there.
All right. That might be going on YouTube.
My primary question for you two as editors is, as a composer submitting something for publication, with technology being what it is, and anybody who has pretty much access to a computer can download Finale and write the music and submit it, how do I write something that is going to catch your eye out of all of the pantheon of things that are out there that are coming across your desk?
Good question, Greg. Here's what I tell people. Don't send a cantata if it's your first project, okay? The reality is, a project like that in particular is something that publishers have a ton invested in. The music dealers do as well. And they are not likely to take a risk, a major financial risk on somebody that they don't have an established relationship with or feel like the general consumer base. I think what Joe has said, is it Michael? Michael, what Michael obviously did, and I haven't seen the piece, Michael, but something that probably kind of comes right down the middle in terms of the need of the massive and the largest sector of the church music market. I think things that maybe have a specific thematic focus rather than something that's general sometimes will. We need Advent pieces, we need Christmas pieces, we need Palm Sunday. I mean, those are things that are observed across denominational lines.
I just on that same line, because I mentioned this in the other class. I was talking about our mailer, and you can have one in all this, but to educate yourself. This and I know Lorenz has it, just like I do, because I know Gene Ann and I know Lloyd and I know how they operate. But they have these charts, these categories that they must fill, and at the back of this mailer are similar categories which segregate for our customers so they can quickly find a cappella, call to worship, children, concert, dramatic readings inclusive, general handbells, obligado, praise team, service music, then special seasons and the seasonal things, spirituals, gospels, youth choir, SAB, two-part, SSA, TTBB, then Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, Thanksgiving, All Saints Day, baptism, child dedication, Christ the King, church anniversary, commitment, communion, confirmation, memorial, funeral, missions, social justice, music appreciation, ordination, reformation, revival, second Advent, and stewardship. That was our, and every one of those categories are things that we have to fill, or we would love to have a balance of subject matters. Now that's just for this. We have a whole section for the spring too, like Lent and Ash Wednesday and Trinity Sunday and all these kinds of things. And the subjects like grace or stewardship, communion, things that are not seasonal but are specifically ministerial categories. And as Lloyd was saying, to try to find things that are in the, and I look at it, oh, that's not a whiteboard, is it? I'll do it here.
You might not want to write on that. Ricky, you bought it.
This is the way I do it for my marketing people. We call this, our different imprints, like Glory Sound or whatever. But pretend that's contemporary, and this is traditional, and this is a school market, and educational. And so we try to put we want to be honest about the style and the difficulties, and we want our publications to start fitting, in a way that's not over to one side too much, you see. And then those pieces that actually fit at the intersection of all three of those things are going to be the mega hits. But we would never, ever put every piece right there, because that means these circles would not be healthy. They wouldn't be expanding. So every once in a while we'll put a piece right there, to test the bubble, to see if we can build a bigger market by doing something a little progressive. But if you look back at the end of the day, and I do this, and I'm honest about a piece's stylistic and difficulty level and market emphasis, as Lloyd was saying. And these circles can be done for seasonal things. They can be done for the style of the music. There's lots of different ways you can draw these circles. I wanted to show a balance of little dots all over, little flags that we put on there. And so when there's that visual balance, I know my crop is balanced. Now, what does that mean to you all? It means that if publishers are looking for that kind of balance, where is your flag going to go? And where will we have the place, where are those holes? I'll tell you right now, SAB is one thing Marquez doesn't usually write. Because you're going to hear a requiem tonight. I mean, that's where his creative life has brought him. And yes, let's celebrate that because he's Marquez and he's awesome. And so you're going to hear big, giant stacks of sound. Now, if you sent the same piece, but it had your name on it, it would not be published. Is that fair? No. But you see, he has paid with years of building a relationship with his constituency and the people who look to him for music. And now is his time to celebrate these larger forms, and he has already laid the groundwork for the success of that from an industry standpoint, and maybe even from an artistry standpoint. And so you can't write, here's my quote, you can't write your 9th symphony first. Beethoven had to write 8 of them first until that 9th one pushed the bubble out, you see. That was on the edge. He combined it. He lived at the intersection of 4 or 5 different things that make that perhaps the greatest symphony ever written. But then there's the First Symphony, which is very much in the style that was, where he emerged from, the Haydn model. It was a little progressive. It was beginning to push things out, But you can see the evolution of his creative life through that, the sonatas and through the symphonies. Not all of them were, those last piano sonatas and the Grosse Fugue and the quartets that just were almost modern in their conception. So don't be discouraged when, as Lloyd says, you don't send in your cantata first. There will be a time for those kinds of things once you have paid your dues.
And the other thing too, and some of you I think were at the luncheon yesterday that some of us were responding to or interacting with you in that setting. Rejection letters go with the territory. We all have had them. We all still get them for any variety of reasons. And a lot of times, and I tell people, a lot of times this is not at all a reflection or commentary on the quality of the music writing itself. Timing is huge. We can only do so many settings of Come Thou Fount within a given period of time.
Were you all in the reading session today? Mm-hmm. Do you remember Heather Sorensen's "Oh Love That Will Not Let Me Go"? Mm-hmm. Rejected by my company. Now that one got, it's crazy. I didn't do it, but I'm not the committee.
Do you know Gil Martin's "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross"? Gilbert Martin's which is I call it the quintessential setting of that. Gil was an editor with the Lorenz Company for decades up until his retirement here within the past couple of years. Rejected by the Lorenz Publishing Company, his company, and subsequently published by Theodore Presser and perhaps I would say it's the largest.
The Awakening was rejected by Shawnee Press, rejected by Hope, rejected by Lorenz, rejected by Henshaw. Everyone rejected the. I finally went back to Shawnee again and went to the CEO and said, "Look, it's a commission. If it's the ACDA, I got to, And they took it, and with no expectations of it selling, and it's nearly at 900,000 copies now. Too hard, too sad, too long.
So who could read it?
So just understand that. Now, it may be because your piece stinks.
We've all had some of those.
I had some stinkeroos too, that got rejected because of that. But those, I sat there and shook my head as I saw you responding to Heather's beautiful, beautiful piece.
Yeah.
But there was a technical reason why it was rejected at Shawnee, and I said, "Why you guys lost your marbles up there? Why in the world was this?" Well, we have another composer who, and it's the setting of the same text, and in all honesty, they did the right thing because they were protecting both composers. They didn't want to have the same text on it, and it was actually the right decision, even though it was artistically. When I saw you respond to it, and I could just, this crescendo happened, I went, well, there, I knew it. I knew that was going to jump off the page in a beautiful way. So, you understand, if Heather Sorensen, who's at the top of the biz right now, writing fresh and wonderful things, is going to get a rejection letter on a beautiful, it's going to be a best-selling song, there's got to be more than just oh my gosh, my piece stinks. There is lots more that go into the decision-making process. Next question.
What do you want from a composer?
Shawnee Press, and then he can speak. We want a PDF, a finale file if you have it, not required. A PDF and an MP3. If you have the ability to turn your finale file into MP3. Why? There's so many versions of finale. All of the members on our committee do not have the same version of finale. Maybe they should, but they don't. And so the MP3 allows us to look at a PDF on an airplane, put on headphones and still hear it, even if we don't have finale on a laptop, or if we're in a hotel or a computer that doesn't support it. So.
And I would say it's a similar kind of response. We do not dictate the MP3 by any stretch. And I didn't hear Joe saying dictated, but you know that's not a bad thing if that's available.
And you understand it's not a performance of it. We don't have to have a performance.
Right, right. No, that's right. Yeah, no. You know, if it's done in a music software, typically you can convert that into an MP3, so you get the oral rendition of that. What's that?
Do you accept the Sibelius?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. But because our industry, by and large, is a finale-based industry, each of the publishers, I think, that we probably are seeing here, the engravings are done, by and large, in finale. There may be a few exceptions, but not very many. So that's why the PDF will translate, and then if we need to, if we take it, we may need to retranscribe it into a finale file, but that's done all the time. And the other reality is, and Joe implied this, but it's important for you to understand that knowledge of a music software is not a prerequisite for submission of a piece. There are some very significant and wonderful names that you would know. Cindy Berry, David Schwabel, Gilbert Martin, John Carter, just to name a few off the top of my head of persons who have no facility to speak of in music software. Hal Hobson. But I will say this. If you send something, it doesn't matter whether it's software or whether it's handwritten, make it legible. If we see kind of haphazard approach taken to the manuscript we receive, and you can tell that whether it's engraved or handwritten. You know, accidentals that are missed, time signatures that are kind of hit and miss, just sloppily done. It won't get a very serious review because it seems to be a reflection of the amount of effort and maybe the seriousness of the composer.
It's like dressing in jeans and a t-shirt for a job interview. It sends a message when it comes in and it's not been prepared with, you know, the level of integrity he's talking about.
Make sure that the tempo indications reflect the way you would play it. Oftentimes we get minimal tempo, but you have the composer sit and all of a sudden, you know, there are a lot of things that are interpreted as that individual plays or sits or sings or maybe conducts it that are never reflected in the manuscript, and your piece doesn't get a fair review in that instance. So just make sure you're diligent about that.
What about copyrights? You want the composer to copyright, or are you going to copyright, or what?
For all practical purposes, the copyright law states that if you have done the piece, if it's yours, it is already copyrighted. Quite frankly, it's a lot of unnecessary hoops if you go through the process of contacting the Library of Congress and taking out a copyright, because the reality is the publisher is going to ask for that copyright. I don't own my pieces. Joe doesn't own his pieces. So somebody oftentimes will call and say, hey, I'd like to do this to your piece. And I say, you know, would you have a problem with that? And I'll say, no, I don't have a problem with that. Here's the reality though, I don't own the piece. And you need to contact this person at the publishing company. Now, if you're talking about a licensed tune, like a Keith Getty tune or a hymn that's copyrighted, Great is Thy Faithfulness, How Great Thou Art, Lift High the Cross on down the line, it's pretty important for you to know that you either have received permission to do this or that you've been in dialogue with the publisher that maybe is going to be reviewing your arrangement of it, let's say, to know that there aren't going to be major issues or hurdles to
I mean, there's just some songs that we don't have access to. There's some songs that Lorenz doesn't have access to because of high-level relationships within the intellectual music business. So, yeah. And a lot of times, I will say, big copyrights are assigned to staff writers. So it's hard for someone to say, hey, I've got, you know, White Christmas here, my arrangement of it. It's not that it couldn't, but chances are, if somebody's suddenly, well, for instance, I can remember the day I got the call to arrange God Bless America. I went, what? How'd that happen? Well, just don't ask questions, just do it. You know? And and it's been the #1 piece for 2 years now, is because it's God Bless America, not because Joe Martin, I can tell you that right now. I just tried to not screw it up, you know, because that's the one thing you don't want to do when you get an important assignment like that. But they're typically going to give it to the Lloyd Larsons and the Mark Hayeses and the Dan Forrest and those kinds of guys who have that track record.
Well,
They
part
get
of
a treasure.
it, there's greater risk too. It's kind of like the cantata, you know, there's a little more risk for the publisher, so, because the profit margin shrinks when you've got a license there. And so the publishers are probably gonna take a little less risk. They may not call Michael if Michael's got one piece in the catalog and say, hey, Michael, you take God Bless America. But they're inclined to call maybe Joe or Mark just because there's a relationship established and there's a little less risk because the cost is increased significantly just because it's a licensed tune.
Yeah.
That's a part of the business, quite frankly, I'm not real crazy about, but it's a part of the reality of being in the business.
Other questions?
So would you recommend then, starting off, to focus on original text, music compositions, and what's in the public domain then? To focus on for submission?
Yes, I would. Hymn texts that are in PD. Both Lloyd and I are big on collaborations too. Learning about the people in this room who are writing, or the people who are where you are in the industry, and getting together. I mean, Paul Williams was one of my best friends I ever had, and it started with him approaching me at a conference like this and saying, you don't need, you know how Paul was, he said, you don't need me, but if you want to ever set some of my words, it'll cost you half of everything you make. You know, and that's just what Paul was. He was just
And Christian love, of course.
a Christian love, yes. And so we started writing together, and it turned into a great partnership. And Lloyd wrote with Paul, but that came out of just something as casual and as this room right here. We were at the Composer Symposium when I met him in Nashville at the Sunday School Board. Yep.
And the reality is, there are people in your church and in my church or in the church down the street that may be potential collaborators. Jan McGuire.
Perfect example.
Lyricist out of Georgia, and somehow, I don't even exactly know all the story, but her music director found out she enjoyed writing some poetry and that kind of thing, and he challenged her to write a hymn or two. And I would guess many of you in this room have some Jan McGuire lyrics in your core
awesome.
library, because she has a real gift for that. And just because somebody tapped her and said, you know, hey Jan, you seem to have some gifts with words, a gift with words, and she took that as an encouragement to go and to try it, and she's done well.
There's a great chapter in that book by Robert Sterling, because Robert's such a good lyricist, and has worked with some of the great lyricists. That if you're interested in developing that, that's an area. I'm telling you, that's an area that saying something significant. We say nothing beautifully all the time, but to say something beautifully is really, really important. And so, if you think you might have the gift of gab in that regard, I would say that's an interesting field to explore. Not easy to say, tell the old story in a new way.
Do y'all accept just lyrics? I see
Yes.
I see some of the pieces that that have someone's name on it, and Lloyd will have written the music for it and all. I know Lloyd's name, but I don't know this other name, and I wonder where you got the how that was
I
how
think
that
that
happened.
happens, and on occasion, those have even come to us from the publisher themselves.
That's
where
usually how mine is.
somebody has submitted to the publisher, said, hey, I wrote this lyric, I don't know if it has interest, but would love to. And so, the editors from the publishing house will sometimes circulate that lyric to some of us. And for whatever reason, some may say, it doesn't strike me, and somebody else will snatch it up and say,
Well, you sent me a lyric the other day from the publisher. I mean,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, that's a common practice, really.
I think.
One of the interesting thing, I find it very, very heartening. I was talking with someone else just the other night about, church wars and divisions and stuff. And I was remembering a time when I was in Knoxville, Tennessee, and we had a huge minister of music group that met monthly. And we were of all different stripes and flavors and whatnot, and we got along. You know, we weren't the theology, you know, even though we knew we had differences in theology, but that didn't matter. We got along. And I see some interesting things because I see you being published by Hope Publishing Company. I see you know, your name is, even though you're with Lawrence, that you've got publications all over. Do y'all just get along that well?
And we actually kind of do, don't we?
We do, yeah. Sometimes our bosses are a little less lenient in that regard.
We laugh about our bosses who want to destroy each other, you know.
Yeah, you know, but there's a professional collegial respect, I think, for each other, and it's a great thing. And I certainly can say that about the writers. As much as we beat up on each other, you know, in these kind of settings, it's still there's great mutual respect.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing, but I just wonder how that works in the corporate. I don't know any other corporate setting where that exists.
Well, there's a little bit of wheeling and dealing going on to get it.
Sometimes there is a little reciprocity kind of thing, which happens from time to time, which is part of the agreement on occasion, and it varies from project to project, quite frankly.
And one of the reasons that gave birth to a conference, this particular model of conference, which my company, Martin Creative, has developed over this is the biggest one, is the idea of not being competitors for just a week, you know, but to be co-ministers to you, so that we come in and we get to be comrades in this you know, process of bringing the gospel through music to people, and accomplish for our companies what we must accomplish, because we are, you know, we have to do that. That's just our job. But to be able to use the structure of the conference in a non-competitive way. That's the reason the sessions are organized according to subject, and we read each other's music. Mm-hmm. We don't just read our own music, because we want, this is who we are in our hearts, even if sometimes we have to put the corporate hat on. We all pretty much sprang from the same swamp. You know?
I just think I think that's a very heartening, and I think that's a tremendous model for the way that everything should work. You know, I applaud
the reality
you guys
is,
for doing it.
you know, for me, I wear my church musician's hat first and foremost when I do my and you know, my church sees more Larson music than they should, and I usually tell them it's not always good, but it's always cheap. But the reality is they see a lot of Joe Martin, they see a lot of Pepper Choplin, they see a lot of Mary McDonald, a lot of Craig Courtney, because these are folks whose music works in my church setting, and whose music I value and I appreciate.
We look out for each other. Yeah, we really do.
I think that's great.
You had a question, sir.
I wasn't in your earlier sessions, and so I may be asking about something you've already talked about. This is slightly different genre here. But do you see any trends away from the formulaic kind of anthems that we have right now? I'm noticing at the collegiate level, everybody's writing a Martin Lauritsen kind of cluster, you know, and I keep thinking, break out of that, you know. And in certain anthems, I love you know, a certain amount of them, but I can almost make up an introduction immediately to what an anthem's going to be. And I'm just wondering, do you see any trends? That's something I'm always looking for, something that's new and different, not just in the text, in the melody, but also in the style. You understand what I mean?
Yes, I do.
That was a statement more than a question, wasn't it?
No, what you're saying is absolutely true, and you know, and my colleague here and I have a formula that we, you know, are comfortable with, and sometimes we feel like we're swimming with handcuffs on as well, because let's face it, when you put I drew the triangle: ministry, artistry, and industry. And the balance of those three things in the last class. Okay. And the idea of all of those finding a certain balance is important to us, because it's just it's a healthy thing. We have thoughts beyond what we write down, but because that one part of our that ministry part or that industry part pulls us tight, if we just wrote for the artistry part of it, it probably would have more originality and more experimentation, which I think some composers take it upon themselves to stretch. I mean, I wished I could write some of those cluster chords. And you know, in my dreams I do, but I know that I have a certain responsibility to, you know, for better or
Sure.
for worse, to people who look to me for music. Every once in a while, I do get a lovely assignment where I don't have to, you know, write like my usual thing. And it's nice. And I think the industry sometimes, because it is driven by certain dynamics that we are all familiar with, you know, survival,
Financial survival.
financial survival, sometimes falls into ruts. And hopefully, there'll be some great, well, I think Dan Forrest has done that for. He's taken the best of, I think I said it in his introduction, I think he balances artistry and ministry better than anybody right now, because he's pushing that artistic thing a little bit forward. He's raising the level of, it's like Craig Courtney did, and John Nesbeck before him, and others in the Shawnee catalog, you know, Gordon Young, and you know, legendary names that found a voice that had one foot in what had come before and what was in the moment, but also pushed us to the future. And I think there's some personalities out there. Heather Sorensen, I truly believe, is a fresh voice. And I think I look forward in the next 3 to 4 years to seeing where this synthesis of contemporary and her classical training and just her experiences, I mean, you know, where that will take her. I'm really fascinated to watch that. Brad Nix, another name that I am just absolutely mesmerized by right now. So,
Well, I think it's important for us not to try to write in your voice or your voice. Each one of you has, you know, one, and
good point.
and I do think Dan has a kind of an originality, you know, and or we don't want to write like John Rutter, you know.
But we want to
I do,
have John
actually.
Rutter.
I do want to write like that.
We do want to have John Rutter in our life. Years ago, I did what I said, this is my Natalie Sleep
But
voice.
Sleep,
And
Right.
Natalie's music doesn't sell like it did at one time. Obviously, she's not around to continue expanding her. Every now and then, I've tried to take on my Pepper Choplin voice,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
but everybody kind of has their personality. But I think also within your voice to find ways to express yourself across the spectrum of whatever that voice is, so that you're not always right here in that voice, but that voice takes on multiple timbre.
And each of us are unique individuals. Our experiences are so different, and it does sometimes get squeezed through these conduits. These like they come out, and all of them are little rose petals that look the same, you know, because of the industry portals that govern sometimes the delivery of the information. But that's another thing that digital has done too. A lot of people are self-publishing, and there's these names that emerge. What's the guy? How do you pronounce his name? Oleg. Have you seen his music?
Olav, I know who you're talking
yes.
about. Olavi or whatever.
Oh yeah, I don't even know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
Oh my word, this kid, they say he's young. It's just amazing music, absolutely beautiful. And I think he's like a cinema. He's brought cinema into these sacred texts and mass movements and things. You know, he's an innovator like Mark Hayes was when Mark started introducing these new sounds, these new tones and the things. Yeah, I think they're out there, and hopefully maybe they're in here too.